Thank you very much, Felix, for the prayer. This morning we are here because we have been in the news Parliament for all kinds of reasons. Parliament is a house of representation. Our primary duty is to represent the concerns of the people that elected us to the house. This is a duty that Parliament takes very seriously. In doing that, there will be times when Parliament and parliamentarians will take decisions that leaders should take. That is also part of representation. There are other times when Parliament will take the sentiments of the people into consideration and act accordingly. Today is one of those days. We've seen last week, Friday, Parliament received an architect's model on a proposed 450-seater Parliament. Discussions are still going on about the construction of the new chamber. However, it has generated a lot of national interest, and the conversations have gone on in traditional and social media, and Parliament is aware of it. We've taken all the views that have come to our attention into serious consideration, and I can assure you that Parliament will work to make sure that the views and concerns of the people that we represent are properly articulated and dealt with. The majority leader is the Minister for Parliamentary Affairs. He's also the leader of government business. He is the leader of the House. He is here this morning to talk to us journalists and by extension the citizens of Ghana about the chamber and why it was proposed in the first place, and then listen to your concerns. These concerns will be forwarded and discussed, and appropriate actions will be taken. So without any further fuss, may I introduce the Honorable Oseiche Mensah Bonsu, MP for Swami, and Minister of Parliamentary Affairs and Leader of Government Business and Leader of the 7th Parliament of the 4th Republic. Let's welcome him with a round of applause, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Acting Director of Public Affairs, and comrades and friends. Let me welcome you to this engagement. As you have been told, Parliament, at the level of the board, that is the Parliamentary Service Board, is considering the possibility of constructing a new chamber. Let me begin by saying that this has nothing to do with the executive. People want to let it appear as if it is the executive that is taking the decision for us. Nothing can be further away from the truth. And they refer to a statement made by the Vice President in, I think, July 2017, when after we had been visited by a rampaging storm, a portion of the roof of Parliament had been ripped off, and we had serious leakages, and then Parliament's transaction of business had to be halted for that day. When the Vice President came on inspection the day after, and we had told him what had happened and the need for us to reposition Parliament, he said he appreciated our concerns and he agreed that ultimately a new chamber may have to be constructed for Parliament. That was after we had made some representations to him, and he said he was going to ferry our concerns to the President, who had traveled out of the country at the time. So let me say that it is not an executive decision. I want to underline that, because some media houses and some members of the public, citizens of this country, perhaps for want of relevant information, want to posit that is executive that's taken a decision. As I said, that is most untrue. Let me, at the very outset, also indicate to you that this was supposed to be a meeting to be addressed by the minority leader and myself. Unfortunately, he just informed me that he's bogged down by some activities and is not able to join us at this time. Perhaps he may join later. So that is it. But you might have seen that yesterday, the whole of yesterday, we were together trying to put out some information about what we have been doing. Let me use this occasion to apologize to our members of parliament, because it is most inappropriate for members of parliament to hear about this for the first time in the press, as happened after the events of last week, Thursday. I myself was late to that media encounter, and when I got there, I met the minority leader and a board member, the Honorable Hakman Owusu Ajimang, and I was asking whether they had agreed on that, because honestly, I was not aware of that arrangement, and I thought that was going to be limited to the board members, because we needed further briefing on where we were with the project. Unfortunately, I think that process itself also, I must admit, boomeranged somewhat, because it's mostly inappropriate. The facility, if we get to construct it, is going to be for members of parliament, and the members of parliament should get to know of the process that the board was engaging in, rather than to learn from it, from the press, what was going on. And certainly that was not the best. That's why I'm saying that I want to use the occasion to apologize to members of parliament. My purpose for this encounter is to put out relevant information about this whole enterprise. Unfortunately, in our attempt to do that beginning yesterday, some people are personalizing it. Chairman Zabosu is defending the project. Again, I mean, we should be truthful and very objective to ourselves. I belong to the board, the service board, unlike many of our colleagues. And because the speaker as the head is not even in the jurisdiction, if something has, there's a fallout from the media interface, I should be in a position to put out relevant information which is occasioning this whole endeavor. And that is what I've tried to do. As a person, I may have my own ideas, but I belong to the collective. That's the body. And so what I do out there is to put out information as to how it's becoming necessary to engage in this exercise. It has nothing to do with me. That is why it's most unfortunate people are not discussing issues, but they are attacking the personality of Chairman Zabosu. And I think that is most uninformed and most unfortunate. If what information I'm putting out there does not meet your standard, and you want to interrogate the issue, you can do that. But don't please attack personalities. It doesn't serve any useful purpose. But let me say this. Now, the genesis of this whole exercise began from the time of Justice Adeline Bamforado, when we all felt that the time has come into this fourth republic to look for a suitable place for Parliament. Remember, even before her, we had secured a parcel of land around Trasacco, which was going to be developed into a parliamentary enclave. Along the line, the land got breached, and various people entered that parcel that had been earmarked for that parliamentary village. And so we then came back and tried then to concentrate on developing this enclave. That is how come we started with the refurbishment of the Job 600 complex to serve as offices for members of parliament. The process was fast-tracked under Right Honorable Justice Joyce Adeline Bamford-Adu, and we started the refurbishment at the time. Alongside it was this discussion on the construction of a new chamber facility. Why? Because as a people, we recognize that there are three arms of government: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. The executive have their own enclave. The judiciary have their own enclave. It is only Parliament, as an arm of government, that doesn't have its own enclave. Where we are sitting now, the whole of this land, you will know, is for state protocol and not for Parliament. The Job 600 complex, even after refurbishment, still remains the name of state protocol. That is the executive and not Parliament. So we are doing a couple of things together. In fact, we started with President Kufuor, through President Mills and President John Mahama. Up to now, we want to secure these precedents for Parliament. We are still working on that. We have not been able to achieve that. Now, since independence, Parliament used to have a parliamentary structure that predated our independence, and it came to be used after independence as the Parliament House. At the time, the number of people there was 104. That structure itself initially housed about 56 members of the Legislative Council that preceded independence. As said, after independence, they continued to use it. When the number came to be increased from 104 to 200 in the Fourth Republic, it became obvious that that facility could no longer host a 200-member parliament. And so you'll recall that the swearing in of the first parliament in the Fourth Republic happened in the conference center, the International Conference Center. And then this facility that we are using now, which used to be the nation's conference center before the construction of the International Conference Center, then got refurbished to accommodate the 200 members at the time. So I think about a year or so into the first parliament of the Fourth Republic, they migrated to the then refurbished chamber. 2004, the number got increased again from 200 to 230. Then we needed to expand the central arena to be able to accommodate the additional 30 members, which was what was done at the time. It then exposed the process of refurbishment, exposed the columns, the pillars in the house. 2012, another addition of 45 to 275 now. And again, a further expansion of the arena, the debating arena. That then meant a full exposure of the pillars, to the extent that now there are members of parliament sitting by the pillars who are not able to attract the attention and indeed catch the eye of the speaker. And for that matter, the speaker is not able to recognize them and identify them to speak. And you guys are the same people who are saying to us that there are some members of parliament who are dumb. They don't speak. Some of them cannot be identified by the speaker. And sometimes we see that some of them, if they have to speak, they have to migrate to the front benches to be identified by the speaker. And that even poses a difficulty for the Hansard people, because you know, the various microphones have been configured in the names of those people who should encumber those seats. So the Hansard people sometimes struggle to identify the speakers. And there are cases when ascriptions have been made to some members who perhaps were not even in the chamber, because others used their microphones to speak. That itself is a problem. You would see that because we have had to increase the number to 275, there's serious encroachment on space, such that even the walkways now have become extremely narrow, such that perish the thoughts if there should be any unfortunate incident which would require the rushing out or the emptying of the chamber, and people have to rush out. If we're not careful, it may result in a serious stampede, which may even perhaps result in the death of some members. You don't want to wait until such a thing happens. Now, the design of our chamber is in a horseshoe format. I was saying yesterday that the location of the minority leader and my own seat, the minority leader, as I said yesterday, is only a spitting distance from where I sit. So if perish the thought, I know it will not happen. In a fit of anger, I throw something at him, or he does at me. Well, occasionally I've seen him roll his sleeves. I don't know what is intended to be done. But if he throws the jab, perhaps it may catch my forehead one day. I know he will not do that. But I'm just saying that we are getting too close to each other for comfort, given the fact that human as we are, sometimes debate gets extremely heated. And so we should be in positions that would impose some restraint on us. But we're getting too close to each other. If we have enough space, that will not happen. The configuration of the debating chamber should be such that nobody will be impeded, talking about visually, if the person wants to make a point. It's the reason why the architecture of any chamber is just like maybe the covered terraces of a stadium, because people should be sitting down and should be able to see whatever is happening in the arena, on the park, on the playing field. The same principle affects the design of Parliament. So, colleagues, you have these, and we want really to overcome them. An incident almost happened, I think about 3 weeks ago, when we had traveled out, the speaker, myself, the minority leader, and the clerk had traveled out to attend a parliamentary conference in Central Africa. We were told upon return that a young man had come to Parliament and he had attempted the suicide. Now, why was he going to be successful in that endeavor? Because the public gallery in Ghana's Parliament is not curtained. Elsewhere, the people in the public gallery should be able to see what is happening. But then they should be prevented from having direct access to the arena. This is not what is in place in Ghana. You guys, where you sit, you are directly on top of Mr. Speaker. And if there is a foreign element who comes to mix up with you, because I want to believe that you are not capable of doing harm to the speaker. But if it should happen as it did the other day, somebody comes to mix up with you, you are not able to identify the person immediately, and the person decides to harm the speaker in a way, it could easily be done, and then we'll regret it. The chambers of parliament everywhere else, you have special places for special guests of Mr. Speaker. For instance, if you have former heads of state, former speakers, when they come, they should have reserved places. Now, on occasions when the judiciary follow the Chief Justice into the chamber, they themselves have to be pushed somewhere because there's no proper location for them, which is why we push them somewhere. People are stamping on their feet every now and then, and we are apologizing to them. There simply is no space. Even in the chamber now, when ushers come to serve us with relevant documents, there's no space behind us for them to do that. And sometimes they stand at the ends and they then distribute the papers to the person sitting closest to them. Can you pass these papers on to the others? What shouldn't be done? Sometimes a member may require some relevant information which should be served to the person while sitting immediately, and yet there's no space to do that. We were thinking of a 450-seater chamber, and that is being misunderstood. People think that it is a 450-member house. It is not. It is not a 450-member house. The 450-seater house. What it means is that we want to accommodate all these people that I've spoken about, heads of state, former presidents, maybe former chief justice of the countries, former speakers, distinguished guests of the speaker. Maybe a foreign president comes to Ghana, he wants to address the nation through parliament. We should make adequate space for them. People come from other parliaments, members of parliament come from other parliaments to visit our parliament. They are not required to be in the public gallery. They are supposed to be with us in the chamber. There's no space for them. There's no space for them. So these are some of the reasons why we decided then to do this. Finally, we want to have a situation where our presidents, our elected presidents, will be sworn in parliament and before parliament. That is how it is done in the established democracies. Of course, in the Westminster system, they are necessarily, all of them are members of parliament. They are sworn in parliament. In the presidential system, these presidents get sworn in parliament. A notable exception these days is the United States of America. But even there, they are sworn in the presence of parliament, the forecourt of parliament. Remember, in our own case, only President Kufuor who got sworn in, even then, the first time, in 2001, in the presence of parliament. All others have been sworn in at the Black Star Square. I related yesterday to an incident that happened at the celebration of this year's May Day. When we went there, it was raining cats and dogs. And the occasion was almost mad because it was difficult to have this in open place when and where it was raining so much. Fancy the situation on the 7th of January, after elections, we want to swear in our president, and this is happening. How are we going to, have a turnaround on this? which has happened on a certain 7th January after elections. So you want to prevent such a situation from happening. In these days of terrorism, you must also be very proactive in these matters. You are swearing in the president in such an open place, and some misguided fellow comes there with something strapped on him. How do you prevent a person from detonating that, perhaps in the presence of the elected president? So we should be proactive if we want to prevent some of these things. This is the reason why we are thinking of this 450-seater facility in order to allow us, our presidents, to be sworn in Parliament. Because after all, Parliament it is that represents all segments of society in the country. And the press should also have adequate space in such a situation. So it is for this and some other connected purposes that the board has been considering this. At this stage, the process is not concluded, and the financials have not been concluded, procurement has not been concluded, the agreement is not being firmed up because these ones have not been concluded. And if the agreement is firmed up, it must come to Parliament for approval. And that is why, as I said, I thought it was unfortunate what result that happened last week, Thursday. It shouldn't have happened. I queried it. But then it's something that has come. As I'm saying, the reason for this is to put out the relevant information, what informed the board to continue this enterprise. But we are a parliament, and rightly or wrongly, if the information gets out there and people respond to them in some way, we must take the sensibilities of the people that we lead, the people that we represent, on board. So I would say that ultimately, whatever decision that Parliament comes to take on this would have to factor into that decision the sensibilities of the good people of this country. And on that note, I'd want to end here. If there are any issues for further clarification, we will deal with it. But to insist that Parliament has not taken any firm decision on this. In fact, as I said, to repeat, the procurement processes, the financials have not been concluded, and because of that, there is no agreement in place for the construction, which agreement must be approved by Parliament. And in processing the agreement, in coming to a determination on the agreement, Parliament, being representatives of the people, will factor into that decision the sensibilities of the people that represent. I thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Majority Leader and Leader of the House. The Leader has insisted that Parliament has not taken any firm decision on a new chamber. What Parliament is doing is exploring the possibilities of having a new chamber, and we are exploring all avenues that is open to us. I must indicate that we are aware of the issues that have come up, and I want to put on record that Parliament has the systems that work. And the fact that the majority and minority leaders were the ones championing this cause was because they are also members of the board. It does not mean that people were not allowed to speak on the matter, or that the people were supposed to speak. And I refer directly to a comment that came on our page that they felt that Public Affairs should have handled it. Public Affairs has tried to talk to the relevant people and seek the right authority, and that's why we are saying what we are saying, which is live on GTV, and we're also grateful to the other media houses that are here. We also would like to put on record that we are aware of the various hashtags that is going around, key among which is Drop the Chamber. We want to say that we are aware of all the sentiments. I opted not to use the final word, but basically Drop the Chamber. And we are aware of all that, and we're taking every single comment into consideration. We would like to encourage you to continue your interest in Parliament, but also appeal that we use language that will not be deemed as unparliamentary or unsavory in our remarks. Having said that, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the first Deputy Majority Chief Whip, the Honourable Moses Nyindam, the Clerk to Parliament, Moses Enim, sorry sir, I always mix the two names, Moses Enim, and of course the Clerk to Parliament, Mr. Emmanuel Kwesi Nyimedu, and the head of our Development Department, Xavier Pudu. I will invite questions from the floor. This is a very interesting topic. Please, no preambles, and maybe one man, one question, so that we can get a lot of questions in before Majority Leader has to go to the chamber. Just because he raised his hand first, gentleman in black, and then Duke, Kojo, you have to go back to work, and you. And then Kweku, you'll be in the next tranche. So let's start with you, because I saw your hand first.
Since it's some Ghana Justice. Leader, my question is, would there be any unconstitutionality matter arising out of the president being sworn out of Parliament? Especially, let's say he's being sworn in at the Black Star Square. And if he is sworn in Parliament, before Parliament, what would be the national function of the Black Star Square? Is it prayer campus we used to see people praying there, or what? Thank you.
My question has got to do with the consult. My name is Duke. I work with CTFM and CTTV. My question has got to do with the consultation process that leader admitted that has not gone well, especially with the members of the House. The Honourable First Deputy and Second Deputy Speaker yesterday gave indication on the floor that there may be some debate on this matter before a final decision is taken. I want to find out what the procedure is going to be and if there are any timelines to this consultation so that a final decision will be taken. Thank you.
Thank you. The Majority Leader...
Your name?
My name, thank you. My name is Kojo Yangson. I'm from JoyNews. The Majority Leader makes the point that the process so far has nothing to do with the executive. But we did hear the Speaker of Parliament say that the President has given his blessing to the project and has even agreed to cut the sod when the time is right. We also know that Parliament itself does not allocate resources to itself, that these resources come from the executive. So how are we at the point where we have a design from David Ajay's firm? We have unveiled that design and even announced a timeline of 3 years for construction without the executive's knowledge.
Komla is my name. I work for TV3. May I know, like you have indicated, Leader, that the financials have not been concluded yet, the procurement has not been concluded yet. How much has the Parliamentary Service Board paid to the architect or the developers, David Ajay?
Thank you very much, Komla. May I also acknowledge the Marshal and, of course, our colleagues from Zambia who are here with us today. The leader will take this first tranche of questions. And, of course, we have a communications person from the Speaker's Secretariat also here with us. Leader will take the first tranche of questions, and then we'll move on to the next.
The first questioner, you ask whether the President must be sworn in Parliament. And if it's not sworn in Parliament, then whether that represents any constitutional breach. Yes, the President must be sworn in Parliament. And what happens at the Blaster Square on such occasions is that Parliament relocates to the Blaster Square. So on that day and that occasion, there is a Parliament that is sitting. So he swears in Parliament, and that is why the whole process is, supervised by the Speaker of Parliament. So it's the Speaker who is in charge. Regrettably, on such occasions, it's the same day that members of Parliament get sworn in here. And then when we finish, we then have to migrate to the Blaster Square. Rather regrettably, when we get there, oftentimes, the seats of members of Parliament have already been taken over by the general public. You ask them to vacate the seats for members of Parliament, they tell you, but we voted for you. So if we are here, you are here. So you represent us. So if we ourselves are here, then it's deemed to be Ghana being present. And that is quite unfortunate. So that is it. You cannot have a president sworn in without the parliamentary setting, which is why I'm saying that it's important for us to recline to the status quo. Then Duke, you're asking what consultations that have gone on, the timeline for the consultations, and whether Parliament, that is the MPs, will be involved in the decision taken. Yes. I just went through telling us that the process is far from completion. And because the procurements, the financials, the terms and conditions of any support have not been defined yet. And because of that, we are not in the position, even me, as a member of the board, I'm not in the position to talk from a very informed perspective where we are regarding the financials. The final costs of it, I cannot speak to it. So the consultations certainly will go on, and ultimately, the agreement, when we are finished, that agreement will have to be approved by Parliament. And if the agreement will have to be approved by Parliament, the parliamentarians will have to know the terms and conditions of any financial support or whatever. Till this date, we don't know. So what do I go and tell my own colleagues? When I myself, as a member of the board, I'm not well informed about where we are about the financials. So certainly, the consultations would have to continue in that, and any relevant question that a member of Parliament would ask will have to be answered or responded to. Kojo, you said the Speaker has said that the President has given his blessing. The President, and I refer to what happened when we had that unfortunate visitation of a storm, which ripped a section of the roof of the chamber apart, and the Vice President, representing the President, came to visit. And he agreed with us that, yes, the time had come for us to bring to the front burner this issue about
News Desk on the Joy News channel. I'm Arba Kumsin. You've just gone by is a press conference by the leadership of Parliament explaining, in fact justifying why the 450-seater chamber or edifice that they intend to build must go ahead. They've been responding to questions from the journalists. Let me just give you a quick update on what they have been saying so far. So the majority leader has apologized to the MPs for not informing them ahead of the announced construction of the new edifice. He says the MPs should have been informed before the matter became public. He's also insisting that the move to build the new edifice is not an executive one or an executive decision, but one that has been taken by Parliament as an institution. He is also saying that Parliament is yet to take a decision on the construction of the new chamber, in spite of the fact that they have designated Sir David Ajayi to design the edifice for them. He says no agreement has been reached and the procurement processes have not been concluded. We'll bring you more of this in our midday bulletin.